to this meeting of the Council, and those that have just logging in will carry on as before you complete. I am Councillor Adrian Osborne, Chairman of Babergh District Council, and I will be chairing this meeting today. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements.
Adrian, could you move your laptop so you're talking to the microphone?
Oh, right, okay, yep, sorry. I was going to stand up. Yeah. No, there's short of space with these tables. No, okay. So may I first remind you of some of our domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside in the corridor, opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told to. It is safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. Robert Lindsay here. I would like to remind everyone present that this informal meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Finally, can I ask all councillors to speak directly into their microphones and refrain from covering the microphones with their papers when speaking. Touche.
Sorry to interrupt. Did I mishear, or did you say this informal meeting at the beginning of your preamble? I thought it was a formal meeting.
Yes, sorry, my mistake. It should be formal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. So having gone through that, can I move to the agenda, please? And can I ask all councillors to ensure that their questions and debate are concise, to the point, and not a repeat of other questions and comments. Right. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies for absence from Councillors Fraser, Grandon and Councillor Gould.
Thanks, Jan, for all of that. I would like to send, on behalf of the Council, all our best wishes to Catherine and a speedy return to the Council chamber. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just to declare that I am a Director of Sudbury and District Citizens Advice because it's mentioned within the paperwork.
Thank you.
Under the Overview and Scrutiny report.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other declarations? I shall move on to item 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of November 2021 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? No. Could I please have a proposer? Councillor Ayres, and could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. John Ward. Thank you. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. As this is for the minutes and it's a consensus vote, can you do this by show of hands? All those in favour, please. Thank you, Chair. That is carried.
All right, thank you very much. I now turn to item 4, BC 2124, announcements from the Chairman and Leader. I refer you to papers BC 2124 for noting. Thank you. Councillor Ward. Oh, that's me first, isn't it? I have my paper there noted on the visits I've made on civic duties. I must say I'm a bit disappointed on that I haven't been able to attend as many as I wished to due to the present epidemic, and also some being cancelled at the last minute. Councillor Ward, do you have anything to report?
Yes, I do, Chairman. Yep. Firstly, I'd like to say a few words about the current COVID situation. The Omicron variant produced a very rapid rise in infections over the Christmas holiday period due to its much greater transmissibility. And then we saw a corresponding rapid decline over a fortnight to less than half the peak rate. However, that was last week, and the infection rate is now rising again. The situation is still uncertain, and whilst the relaxing of restrictions is welcome and probably right, we must still take care and follow the basic rules. Maintain distance, wash hands regularly, and wear masks. But there's absolutely no doubt that the vaccination programme is working, and I can personally attest to that. A couple of weeks ago, we had an excellent all-member briefing from the Environment team, highlighting the huge amount of progress that has been made towards our net zero by 2030 target. I thought it would be an opportune moment to highlight the key achievements so far. And the single biggest contribution has, of course, been the replacement of diesel with HVO in our vehicle fleet. Our vehicles were accounting for 25.9% of the total CO2 emissions of the two councils. A total of 730 solar panels have been installed on our two leisure centres and at the Wenham depot. The Babergh leisure centres were accounting for 18.9% of the two councils' CO2 emissions. A new filtration system, saving both energy and water, has been installed at the Kingfisher Leisure Centre in Sudbury. Solar carports have been installed in the Station Road car park in Sudbury. Across the two districts, we have installed solar panels on 2,000 council houses, and 250 more now have air source heat pumps. All new homes delivered for council housing last year were built to an EPC rating of B. We have undertaken the tree canopy survey and biodiversity mapping exercise. And this is quite pertinent, following on from Councillor Ayres' earlier reflection prior to the start of the meeting. Last year, 281 trees were planted and 4,690 hedgerow plants distributed to towns and parishes. And this is only the start of a long-term programme to increase our tree canopy. Although we have been successful in getting grants for a lot of this, it has all nonetheless been achieved within our budget, and also without spending on things that won't provide a measurable impact, just as this administration promised when we developed our carbon reduction management and biodiversity action plans. In addition to the things we're doing for our district, we are working with our partners in the county to support the delivery of the Suffolk Climate Emergency Plan, and we're also helping our businesses and communities to reduce their carbon footprint, starting with last year's first low-energy showcase event at Worsted Park. We are now awaiting clarification of some of the details concerning the government's resources and waste strategy. I think it is fair to say that all local authorities have serious concerns about implementation and costs, and I really hope that we will be listened to, as we, the districts and county, are the ones responsible for collection and disposal. Following on from the announcement or the release of the Levelling Up White Paper this morning, I am pleased to inform you that the government has announced that Suffolk has been offered a county deal within the existing local government structure as part of the Levelling Up White Paper. And this follows the expression of interest submitted by Suffolk public sector leaders last year. There will be a lot more to report on this as the details emerge in the weeks to come, but I do want to stress that this does not mean a single county unitary, combined authority with Norfolk, or an elected mayor. But back to COVID. It is great that for the first council meeting of 2022, we are meeting in person in our chamber. I sincerely hope that this marks an irreversible return to normal. There is a lot to do this year and we need to focus on that. So let's look forward to a much better 2022 when we are finally able to resume our lives without the fear of further disruption, albeit almost certainly having to live with COVID as an endemic disease with annual boosters. Thank you, Chairman.
To be raised. Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If Councillor Ward could just run over the offer that the government has put forward again, because it appeared to be absolutely nothing. And who was consulted on the proposals that were being put forward to government? Was it just the leaders, or did they actually speak to their councils?
There is nothing so far that's been put forward by government. It's all very early stages. The initial offer from government last year was to ask if any counties would like to express an interest in what they call a county deal. The details of that are yet to emerge. The Suffolk public sector leaders provided a summary response to that expression of interest, saying we were interested, and we now are in a position where we can take this forward because the government has accepted us as one of the, I think it's 9 areas to take forward for a county deal, and we await to find out and negotiate the detail with government.
Councillor Hinton.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but so we actually expressed an interest in something we hadn't a clue what it was all about.
Other than the fact that clearly the whole idea is to devolve funding and responsibility for a number of things to the county and with us, with Suffolk, with the districts as well through Suffolk public sector leaders. We don't know the details yet. No, I'm sorry I can't report any more. I said I will be reporting in future as soon as I hear any further information, but at the moment we're at the table where we can talk. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Moving on to item 5, to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Thank you, Jan. Item 6, questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Thank you. I now turn to item 8. Number 7, sorry. Questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. I now turn to item 8, BC 2125, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Report. I would like to invite Councillor McLaren to introduce paper BC 2125, which is for noting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members have got in front of them quite a comprehensive report by me, which reflects the 2 meetings that took place, one looking at the shared legal service and the second one looking at citizens' advice across the district. I'm happy, if everybody feels happy that they've read it, I will be very happy to take any of your questions. I would like to just advise members that Overview and Scrutiny are looking at changing some of the subjects that they scrutinise. I think there has, over a period of years, been a routine rollover of programme, and so we're trying to embrace other subjects other than some of the main subjects that we've always reviewed. But happy to take questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick one on the review of the shared legal services. It talks about the service reported to a steering committee that had representatives from all 3 councils and also reported to leadership teams in each authority. Presumably that's officers and officers, nothing to do with members.
Yes, that's, and can I just say, Councillor Hinton, that Emily Ewell is a member of that steering committee, but it doesn't involve councillors, it is officers. Thank you.
Councillor McLaren. Are there any other questions? Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask the question, so I'm going to ask the monitoring officer. Can I ask a question about citizens' advice or not? I can. Thank you very much. My question is, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee looked at their work, and thank you for that. I do remember 2 years ago that the amount of money that Babergh would be giving to citizens' advice would be increased on a percentage, and that hasn't happened. And I wondered if you could explain why, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. This was discussed actually at our meeting, and you will see that one of the recommendations we made was that the annual payment would be index linked. I have no idea why that has not in the past has been implemented, but we made another recommendation to both cabinets about that.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to come back, because the index linking wasn't done, is there any chance that the difference over the last 2 years would be forwarded as a back payment, please? Thank you.
Councillor Maybury, I take note of what you're concerned about. You will also see that I made an additional recommendation for Sudbury Citizens' Advice. I've still got to follow that through. We've still got to follow that through with Cabinet, but I was very concerned about the amount of debt advice that the Sudbury Citizens' Advice were undertaking with limited resources. So I hope that's reassured you that, and I will pursue your concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. That was a question for Cabinet, so thank you, Councillor McLaren, for that. Recommendations from Cabinet committees. Yeah. Sorry, I've got a bit confused here. 9A, JAC 2110, half-year report on Treasury Management 2021-22. I would like to invite Councillor Hurren to introduce this item and to move the recommendation in the report. Thank you, Councillor Hurren.
Thank you, Chairman. Am I on?
No.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, if it's not... Yeah, we have lift-off. That's fine. Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Must be the cold weather or the wind. We have lift-off at last. Thank you. Just a brief introduction of our work, which is for noting. This is the Joint Treasury Management Report covering the position for the first 6 months of the financial year 21-22. It provides details of performance, effects of decisions taken during that period, and compliance with the Council's Treasury Management Policy. The report explains the factors affecting the strategy and activities, including the regulatory framework, economic conditions, interest rate, and liquidity risk. Interest rates during the year continued at very low levels, and the Bank of England base rate remained at 0.1%. The economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic continued to dominate the first half of the financial year. The easing of restrictions boosted activity in the second quarter of the calendar year, helping push GDP up by 5.5% quarter on quarter. The employment rate increased and economic activity rates decreased, suggesting an improved labour market picture. Annual CPI inflation rose to 3.2% in August, and the BOE now expects inflation to exceed 4% by the end of the calendar year, which is the one just gone, owing largely to developments in energy and goods prices. More specifically for our council, as highlighted in Appendix C, paragraph 5.4, there was one occasion where Babergh exceeded its daily bank account limit with Lloyds by 136k. This was due to Lloyds' online banking system being unavailable for the day, meaning no balances could be invested. The council has in fact reduced its debts by 5.4 million. The investment activities undertaken were in accordance with the approved counterparty list. The council's investment activities, including average returns, can be found at Appendix C of this report. Investment in the funding circle has reduced as allocated funds have been reclaimed and existing loans repaid. Investment is reduced by 31k, leaving the balance at the 30th of September as 135k. The council is compliant with the upper limits for interest rate exposure. The investment activity undertaken for the half year was done so in priority order of security and liquidity over yield, as prescribed in the Treasury management strategy. The paper, Chairman, is for noting, but willing to take any questions, and if I can't answer them, I see that Catherine and Rebecca are in attendance, I believe, to answer the difficult bits. But as Chair, I certainly will do my best. It's been a pretty busy year for us, I would say, and times are difficult, but I'm confident in saying we've done all the right things at the right time. We've complied with everything, and as a district council, I think we should be quite proud of that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hurren. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Ward, do you wish to speak? Thank you. We'll now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Thank you. Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two points, really. Firstly, on page 32 of the report, paragraph 2.14, there's a lot of information about the latest labour market data and all the rest of it, which I assume applies to the whole country. Is it possible to have something more relevant to this district so that we know what's happening in our own district rather than the country as a whole? Because obviously that's what we're more interested in. And secondly, when it comes to the loans on page, there's so much paperwork here, on page 38 of the report, paragraph 1.6, table 3, with the chart, I assume they do not include the SIFCO debt, which of course is considerably larger than anything that's actually down there.
Chairman, on the second one, I think I can be confident in saying no, it doesn't relate to the SIFCO debt. That is something quite separate. I do believe. The first one, it's a national figure. Whether we could extrapolate a local one, I'm not so sure. I think it would be difficult. I'm not too sure if Rebecca or Catherine could help on that one.
Thank you, Chair. We'll have a look. Again, I'm not sure whether we can get that data down at the local level, but we will have a look and see whether that is available. And just if I may take the opportunity while I've just got the floor, the debt that is referred to in the charts, it is inclusive of external debt that we have got for SIFCO because it is the whole borrowing of Babergh District Council. So it is both housing debt and general fund debt. Yes, the loans that Babergh make to Sifco is part of that when we've gone external and borrowed from the PWRB.
Councillor Maybury?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, this may well be a question that everyone says, why are you asking that? But 5.4, it says that the daily bank account limit with Lloyds was exceeded by 136,000. Could the monitoring officer answer two questions on that? The first is that a minus or a positive? And the second is, if it was a minus, did Lloyds Bank charge any interest? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the questions. It was the fact that we ended up with slightly more in our bank account with Lloyds than we should do. So if you take that as a positive, I suppose, because it was more money in the account. And because of that, no, they don't charge us interest because it's money in the account rather than it being an overdrawn account.
Maybury?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I may just come back on that, I think it would be useful for councillors that if this happened in the future, it was actually marked as whether it was a positive or negative. Thank you. If that's possible, Catherine, thank you.
Councillor Lindsay?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just following up on Sifco. If it's there were two questions really. If it's part of our debt, perhaps it could be broken out in the figures what that is. And the second question, a bit more complicated, but when I've tried to ask about Sifco and auditing Sifco in audit before, I've been told that we're not allowed to look at it in the audit committee. Just wondered why that was. Thanks.
Catherine, would you, or Bryn?
Yeah, I think, Chair, I'll have to defer on to either to Dave Busby or Catherine Steele on that one, I would think.
I'll try first, Chair. In terms of the last point about audit of Sifco, Sifco is a wholly owned company, so it has got its own auditors. So they are the people who are externally appointed by the Sifco board to look at Sifco's accounts. Obviously, their reports and are published on Companies House, so once that has been enacted, then it is publicly available. But that's why Joint Audit and Standards don't have the overview, and our external auditors, EY, don't audit Sifco's accounts, but they do look at Sifco's element in our accounts because we have to prepare group accounts because of the company status with Sifco. So that element EY do look at. In terms of the Sifco debt, then there may be something in the report. I know there's lots of appendices in this report, and I haven't had the time just to scan it to see whether that is explicit. But if not, we'll bear that in mind for future reports. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other questions? Councillor McCraw?
Just on that last point about the examination of Sifco, it is subject. Sorry, I apologise. I've forgotten. We're allowed to stand up again, so I apologise, Chair. But that is subject to an annual scrutiny process, and Audit and Standards is a scrutiny process of one type. But in the case of Sifco, that's always been subject to an annual scrutiny process since the institution of Sifco. And it's been quite exhaustive over those years. So I think those questions could be answered through the next annual process.
Are there any other questions? All right, as the questions are finished, we will now move to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Who would like to start the debate? No. No debate. Councillor Hurren, do you wish to add anything?
No, I think, Chair, regard what I said in the questions, and it is all in the papers anyway, no, enough has been said. I am the proposer and happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, that vote is now showing in blue. If you could cast your vote, please. Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, we all need to take your vote verbally. Agree, thank you. Councillor Carpendale, are you able to vote? Would you like me to take it verbally?
Sorry, yes, for. The screen's frozen, so I can't do a thing with it.
Okay. And Councillor Nunn? Thank you. So 3 more. Chair, that is 28 for and 1 abstention, so that is carried.
Thank you, Jan. That is carried. Right, 9B, a verbal update from Chair of Licensing and Regulatory Committee. I would like to invite Councillor Maybury to provide her verbal update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, indeed, the Licensing and Regulatory Committee met on the 10th of December, and we discussed the no casino proposal. This was not agreed. We decided that it would be best left as it is. The issues are the casino, no casino resolution would only last for 3 years. There is no hope, sadly, for some, that of us in Babergh getting a casino licence. The licences are set out by central government, they are allocated, and we do not have any. So it was decided by the committee that this would not be a suitable resolution to put forward that a no casino resolution should be approved at council. So it has been left in abeyance. We did actually look at the positives. Perhaps if casinos ever did come to Suffolk, would there be an increase in nighttime activity? Would there be a financial gain for the district? This was all looked at, but it was decided to leave it in abeyance, that there would be no ruling on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Are there any questions for Councillor Maybury? So we'll move on to the next item, which is 10. Oh, sorry, Councillor Busby, sorry.
What happened to debate? Just a thought, since we're producing a cultural strategy, Should this not be part of that?
Thank you very much, Councillor. What do you mean by cultural strategy? Would you like to expand that further? Because then I would be able to answer, I think, more fully. Thank you.
Well, it's early days yet, but it's looking at the arts, culture of the district, determining how we should be going forward in that, where we should be investing, and I would have thought casinos could come under that as part of our strategy.
Thank you. But to come back again to you, Councillor Busby, we do not have any allocations for any licences, so we cannot have a casino. The government only puts out so many allocations. We don't have any, and there was a review in the House of Lords, and there was a lot of negative talk about casinos, and as far as the information that we had gathered, there would not be any further allocations of casinos. So thank you for explaining your position, and hopefully I've explained the position of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Councillor Movesi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Maybury actually answered the question that I was going to voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No other questions. I shall move on to the item 10, BC 2126, the development of housing revenue account business plans. And I would like to invite Councillor Jan Osborne to introduce the paper, BC 2126, and to move the recommendations in this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. The Housing Revenue Account, HRA, is the financial account used to manage our landlord activities. It is ring-fenced in law and can only be used for providing services to council housing tenants through the collection of rent and charges. Other council services are funded through council tax and central government support, which benefit all citizens of Babergh, regardless of tenure. The HRA business plan, which is in development, will set out our income and expenditure plans for delivering council housing services, as well as setting out our key council housing priorities for the forthcoming years and demonstrating how we intend to develop our services to meet tenants' expectations. This is timely work as we look to the introduction of the Social Housing White Paper, which sets out the actions the government will take to ensure that residents in social housing are safe, are listened to, live in good quality homes and have access to redress when things go wrong. The Building Safety Bill, which is the next step in groundbreaking reforms to give residents and homeowners more rights, powers and protections, making homes across the country safer. This will overhaul regulations, creating lasting generational changes, setting out a clear pathway on how residential buildings should be constructed, maintained and made safe. This is alongside the introduction of our Council's outcomes framework and the development of our new build design guide and technical specification, as well as a midpoint review of our homes and housing strategy, and associated action plan. During the past few months, we have been listening to our stakeholders to develop our approach to the plan. Members will recall being invited to respond to a survey, and we have also used last year's members' workshops and the work which centred on a stocktake to contribute to the priorities that we have established for this plan. This report sets out the approach that has been taken and identifies the areas of focus most important to everyone and which will be incorporated into the plans. Over the next couple of months, we will be finalising the plan with the intention of the final version of the HRA business plan being presented to full council for comment. Moving forward each year, the HRA business plan will be reviewed and updated to set budgets and charges for the year ahead, whilst providing an updated 5-year plan for our capital investment programme. Mr. Chairman, I would like to propose recommendations as set out in this report and ask for a seconder. 3.1, to note this report. 3.2, approve the creation of a new HR business case. Myself and the Assistant Director of Housing, Gavin Fisk, is here to answer any questions.
as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion and must be a question. Anybody for the questions? Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On section, I wonder if you class, on section 4.19, it says an emphasis on good quality design, energy efficiency, low running costs, sustainability and use of modern methods of construction where appropriate. I just wonder where, if you could explain where good quality design and energy efficiency wouldn't be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your question. In most cases, they will be appropriate, but there will be properties where it won't be possible to do that. Not just in new builds, but if we've got older builds. For example, if you've got an older build that has got a cement floor, it's going to be much more destructive to remove that cement floor and to transport it and then destroy that flooring than it is to put it in cost efficiency. So most of the times it will be a case of that we will be able to put them in. But again, I say this over and over again, it's a case of cost, and it's a balance between how much we spend on actually retrofitting properties and the new ones that are coming forward, as well as providing a home for those that need a roof over their head. So there's a balance to be had there, so we need to be mindful of that when we come to setting budgets.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This bit is under section of building and buying new council homes, not referring to retrofitting. So, how is that appropriate?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Jameson, for the question. Apologies if the report is not clear. I think the reference to where appropriate is in relation to, in fact, modern methods of construction, where, in fact, depending on the design guide and the programme, you could see more traditionally built homes, or you could see modern methods of construction, perhaps in confined sites or sites where actually MMC lends itself. We've got an example in Mid-Suffolk at the moment where we're developing a scheme in the rear area of a council-owned property to provide modern method of construction for rough sleepers to live in for up to 2 years as they're supported back into to 10 years. That site is confined to nature is an example where MMC is appropriate.
Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've heard in the past about the backlog of repairs and work that's needed on our properties, but there's no mention of it anywhere in this paper. Don't you think that would be something that ought to be included in the work plan as to how we're going to catch up on our backlog and make sure it doesn't occur again?
Thank you, Councillor Hinton. That's actually getting into the finer detail, and that will come out in an action plan that follows through with the HRA business plan. It is actually referred to. It's referred to in 4.8 of the priorities, investing in our homes, 4.13 climate change, and 4.23 improving service to our tenants. But what you're referring to is the finer detail. There is a lot of work going on in the repair service team. It's true that it has been facing its challenges. If you think back 2 years ago, for 12 months, we couldn't even get into properties to undertake minor repairs. And then also further on from that, another 12 months, where residents were reluctant to let us into their property to undertake those repairs. So it has created a backlog. And also, it's been really difficult to get materials and obviously issues with staff sickness. So it's got its challenges. There is a lot of work going on. For example, improved engagement with our tenants, together with utilising technology, scheduling software and void management software, more efficient ways to access materials. So with these in place and hopefully continued lifting the COVID restrictions, we will start to see an improvement. Bearing in mind we've also got a new corporate manager on building services who's got a lot of ideas coming forward. So we definitely, members, will see an improvement in our repair services within a 6-month period.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right. One of my questions have been answered already regarding the repairs, so I won't labour that one again. But on page 63, 4.11, ensure our homes exceed tenants' expectations. This includes the fabric and condition of the homes. How are we going to inform the tenants that we have listened to them? Because you emphasise that word quite a few times, and I know you listen to them and you know I listen to them, but I do wonder whether our officers listen to you, us and the tenants. So I'd like to know how we're going to inform people they are being listened to, because if you go over the page then to page 64 and you come down to 4.24, again it refers to, we do need to make sure that we are achieving this, because we have had the problems in the past, and you've worked hard and officers have worked hard, but it doesn't seem to be getting through to the tenants. They're still complaining, they're still saying that we're not reacting quickly enough. So I'd just like to be assured that you will be listening, the officers will be listening, and we will be informing the residents that we're going to do A, B or C. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Yeah, we do have a, you'll recall a few years ago we had a housing board. We reviewed that in 2017 and we developed a new model with a tenant sounding board, which is working really well up to date. So that's one platform that we use to inform our tenants. We could do with more take-up of tenants wanting to sit on that particular sounding board, including younger people. We have a problem in engaging with younger people. That's where we need to focus our efforts on that particular age group. We do an electronic newsletter to all our tenants, and we obviously talk to them when we go out and about. The Safer Neighbourhood team will talk to our tenants when we go out. So there are several ways of engaging with them. And I can assure you that is a priority to start engaging. The social white housing paper makes it very, very clear that that's what we've got to do. So we will be doing that. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paragraph 4.12 on page 63 refers to enhanced void standards to ensure that we don't have voids lasting so long. And it suggested that we're going to focus on quality rather than cost and time. A lot of work was done over the last few years in the voids project, and it saw significant results. We improved void times quite massively. I'd like to be assured that we're not going to completely, I'd not say throw the baby out with the bathwater, but that we are going to continue to monitor those void times and with a view to keeping that performance level up. I can understand quality matters, but quantity is also a matter of a measurement that you can actually define, and it is easy to have a defined measurement, so I'd like to make sure we don't lose the good work already done.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. There was a clear steer from members to focus on how many days, and you're absolutely right. I think we focused on that time, that target, rather than the quality. We've now moved away from that. Yes, we will continue to keep an eye on our voids, but quality will also be an aspect. And I think also it's fair to mention with our voids, we're taking a very proactive approach. And where we've got voids that are going to cost a lot to repair, and they're on a site that actually is prime for development, and so we will look at whether we demolish those properties and build more homes. Now, two examples of that is Shotley, where we demolished 2 bungalows and we built 8 lovely new bungalows, and I was privileged to hand the keys over to those only a few months ago, and I can tell you the tenants that received those keys were very grateful for having those new homes. And then just recently, a few weeks ago, Brantham, that's why Alice has got a smile on his face, we knocked down 2 homes in Brantham, and the site allowed us to build 9 new homes for our tenants. So we're also taking a very proactive approach in regards to voids.
Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. there's loads in this that I'm pleased to see, but particularly in the emphasis on retrofitting, which is so important. We're going to meet our climate commitments. The one area I'm sort of uncomfortable with is the vagueness of the new builds when it comes to building and buying new council homes. We've got 4.18 and some sort of nice words about quality design, but I mean, the fact is, and some of my fellow councillors who represent Lavenham will know there's a new, relatively new group of houses there that were built by the Community Land Trust that come to a far higher, near passive house standard. I find it embarrassing that the council are lagging behind a Community Land Trust. So my question is, can we have some assurance that we're going to not just have some good quality design, but actually do some exemplar buildings when we come to building council houses that are near passive house or passive house standard? Thank you.
Yeah, we are, as I have alluded to earlier, we are developing a design guide and specification, and that's by no way brief. It sets it out very clearly what our aspirations are. Those aspirations might not always be met because there again it may come down to cost, and as I've said before, it's a balance between cost of retrofitting energy efficiency and providing new homes. But I don't know, I think the design guide is coming to Cabinet and then on to full council in the spring. So you will see from their councillors that we're very, very much on board for that particular retrofitting style.
Sorry, which was the bit you referred to just now? Nowhere and... So I just didn't catch it.
Sorry,
it's not a trick question.
In my introduction, I referred to the development of a new build design guide and technical specification, which will be coming to Cabinet and then on to full council in early spring.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question that I thought Councillor Beer was going to ask. And it's concerning 9.7, where it says lack of car parking was the issue tenants were most unhappy about. And I remember some years ago Councillor Beer's support for the provision of additional car parking, and he was kind enough to support my bid for additional parking in Monk's Ely, which was in my ward at the time, where they benefited from a couple of new areas to help ease congestion on the road, where we have council flats, council housing, but there are also privately owned houses that have been bought under the right to buy. And I seem to recall that the funding of that came partly from the housing revenue account and partly from the general fund, balanced according to the benefit that would be achieved. The only reference I can find in here to what we might do to answer that question, what are we going to do about car parking? That's what they're most unhappy about. The only thing I can find is at 4.29, where we say we might be able to demolish some garages, possibly provide some parking, possibly provide some housing on those sites, or possibly move it into sort of an amenity land area. But we can't do all three in the same place. So I'm just wondering, if that is what tenants were most unhappy about, when we produce this document, are we actually going to be looking at ways that we can introduce new parking areas on existing council estates? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthur. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Members, and I know Councillor Beer has raised this on many a time, and tenants as well. It's a real problem, parking, and it's not just in Sudbury, it's not just in Babergh, it's a national problem. However, it is our problem. And what we're looking at is we've got the parking strategy that will be coming forward. They'll be looking at on-street and off-street parking, so hopefully they may come up with some solutions. There's also the review of our garage sites, which is coming forward. Again, a report will be coming to Cabinet very soon on where it's going to be possible to demolish garages and provide extra parking spaces. I see in Bury St Edmunds, I see a piece in the paper today that they're looking at similar situations as well. So I've taken a copy of that. So it's very much on our agenda. It is identified actually in 4.27 and 4.30, improving our neighbourhood. But there again, you're getting into the finer detail. What we need to do is get the HRA business case approved, and then we can look at what solutions we can come up with, if indeed the parking strategy review doesn't come up with any solutions to it. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a similar question to Councillor Arthey, so I'll wait for the debate just to make the point. Thank you.
Councillor Hurren.
Thank you, Chairman. At the risk of being controversial, but I'm sure Councillor Osborne will love this one. As a small rural district council, is it possible that one day we might escape the dreadful gateway to home choice method of allocating our lovely homes? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurren. It's a white elephant in the room, isn't it? We were actually going to review this, and then COVID came into place, and so it took a back seat. And then we started to look at it more carefully, and our corporate manager that we lost, Heather, who unfortunately left us, was chairing the Gateway Partnership Board. I'm not sure if she's still in that position, but she was very much mindful of concerns raised by councillors, including my own concerns. The problem is, when we did look at it, to come out of that gateway, which is a partnership of 7 other local authorities, would be extremely costly. So, you know, there again it becomes a balance of, do we want to spend a amount of money and also the resource time as well in looking at other ways to allocate our homes. When in some ways Gateway works well, I think what we need to do is we need to look at the allocation policy itself. There again it could be difficult because you've got 7 other partners that would have to agree to any amendments we wanted to make to it. But I think rather than say, look, we're going to move out of Gateway, go on to another system, I think we need to look at how we can improve the system that we've currently got.
So I shall move on to debate. You will have allowed to speak for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Thank you. Who would like to start? Councillor Melanie Barrett.
Might as well continue where I was. I'd like to refer to that paragraph also, 9.7, that's on page 68. It talks about the lack of car parking being the issue most tenants are unhappy with. And I think it must be linked to the following bullet point. Staff and members felt neighbourhoods looked untidy or unkempt and poorly maintained because so many vehicles do park on verges and churn up the earth, and you can't see the grass, so there's no point in having the grass. It just ends up looking very untidy with cars parked quite haphazardly. But on the plus side, that must be a testament to our housing, if that's the biggest problem our tenants have got. So, but I think that must be addressed as we've got our parking strategy looking at this issue. And it's not just sufficient to look at the garage sites and say, well, they would form good alternative parking arrangements, because I know from many of my residents who have trade vehicles, they are scared about parking further away from their homes because of the break-ins that they suffer, putting them out of work for the next day if their work van is damaged and their tools have gone. So I know a lot of my residents want to release the often green spaces that are in the front of their tenanted properties, and have parking available where they can have a reasonable chance of deterring thefts and break-ins. So I just want to sort of make sure that the parking strategy is fed into this work that you're doing on this housing business plan.
Okay, my apologies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recall we received an extensive briefing. Actually, I was very impressed with this briefing on the entire issue of housing, the housing revenue account, and specifically these plans from a variety of members from the housing officers. I was impressed more than anything with the ambition of it and the breadth it covered, in fact, every single aspect that you could wish. Now, this is only a starting point, but it seems quite obvious we need to develop this sort of plan. I think provision of housing is one of the prime responsibilities of a local authority like ourselves. There was a period of 25 to 30 years where that provision disappeared almost completely. I'm very glad to see that we've reversed that trend, and I look forward to that continuing. So I'll be supporting this recommendation, well, both these recommendations, completely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Arthur, I hadn't forgotten, I had got it marked and I was going to do it in debate, which is what I'm going to do. But it is to do with the park, and I'd like to know what input and concerns been put in by the Housing Department into the parking strategy, because one of the big problems, as you can see, the tenants feel is their parking ability, and there are lots of areas outside some of these properties where there's a green verge which could be utilised as a parking area. It doesn't mean to say that we lose all our green areas on our estates, because that wouldn't be sensible. But if they're being churned up now, surely they ought to be earmarked to have a look at and see whether we can incorporate them into a hard surface, which would, one, make it look tidier. I think at the end of the day, this is the biggest problems that our council house tenants are facing. You go around the estates, they've all got too many cars. We can't stop that. We can't cope for all of them. Whatever we think, they're not all going to get on their bikes, so they're not all going to get on public transport, they're not all going to walk and cycle to work, they are going to have cars. And we should embrace this, and we should try and help them where we can. There are lots of areas on the estates where this could happen quite easily. But it's the action to get anything done. We take such a long time. We were winning a little while ago with a particular officer going around our estates and solving lots of the problems, and unfortunately the powers that be decided they didn't want to go down that road. Certainly I, as a local councillor, felt that that was the right course of action and we should have continued it. But we are where we are, so can I be assured that you're going to have involvement, that you are going to try and do some of these parking situations, because you go down the estate roads and you can see where the grass is churned up, and a little bit of foresight and perhaps not actually concrete, but there must be other ways we can do it, where we could make a hard surface so that they can park some of these cars off the road and certainly alleviate the road so that they can be used for traffic when it's necessary. Thank you.
Speak, Councillor Maybury.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Am I always Councillor Dawson? I seem to have got Councillor Dawson on here. Oh, you've gone. Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would have thought my Green colleagues would have replied to Councillor Beer. I do not disagree with you at all. However, we do need to look at car parking in a way that is also green, because if you're going to take up all the green areas, and I know Councillor Beer said no, if you take up all the green areas, first of all, that will need then to be a reassessing for public realm as to what green space is available per head of population. Then there's the issue of too much hard standing will actually make water runoff even more difficult in some areas. So I think that looking at car parking is absolutely fine. However, it needs to be done, I think, with the green agenda in mind. And I'm sorry that my green colleagues across the road, as it were, have not brought that up, but I have. And I never know what it's called, but there's this wonderful honeycomb stuff that you actually put down on free draining. Thank you. Yes, but free draining concrete base. And it can actually have grass growing through it. So there's the benefits of both. But Councillor Beer, I do agree with you. We need to do something, but it needs to be the right thing. Thank you.
Just to pick up on a couple of points Councillor Mabry's made, I think most of us would agree with Councillor Beer. The situation with parking in some areas is getting quite critical. It's upsetting the residents. It's making the estates look pretty unpleasant in places. But I would take issue, Councillor Mabry. Some of these areas are no longer green; they're just mud. With the best will in the world, I think the only thing is a porous surface, not one that allows grass to grow through. I don't think that will work. I don't think the grass will grow through. But we need to have proper porous surfaces that are hard surfaces, but allow the water to drain through. And that really is the only solution. And we do need, as Councillor Beer says, we do need to look at this with a lot more urgency than I think we have been doing so up until now.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, could you?
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to your challenge, Councillor Mabry. You teased me into it. No, the reason I haven't responded is because I don't think it's such a big issue. A parking strategy is only going to deal with parking. It's not going to deal with transport, and that's the real problem. We have a duty to provide housing to tenants. We don't have a duty to provide parking for them, but tenants have a right to have decent transport to get where they want to go. The buses, if you look around Sudbury and Cornwall, have been cut to nothing. And all the areas where we have council houses, buses are virtually non-existent. Now, I know the argument's going to be, we're not a transport authority, therefore it's nothing to do with us, Gov. Wash your hands of it. We shouldn't be doing that. There's an expense to providing car parking, just as an expense to providing buses. And if you keep on saying to people, well, now you've got 3 cars, we'll provide more parking for you, where does it end? Where do you stop that? You know, there's, 25, 30, yeah. Well, I'm sure Councillor Babergh would love that, but the rest of us and the ratepayers wouldn't, because there's the costs, not just to us and to ratepayers, but to the planet, are endless. The answer, providing more car parking spaces, is not the only answer. Providing decent transport and looking at ways to encourage buses is part of the answer. And we need a transport strategy, not just a car park strategy. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Lindsay's partly actually correct, but the problem with this is that the parking consultation was established over a year ago by my predecessor, and it's about going forward. And actually interesting, one of the questions that came back is, whilst we might change transport, people are very habitual and they want to use their cars. So it's all very well saying, well, we want to have buses and everything, but people actually aren't using them because of the habits they've inherited and don't want to change. So we have to really think this through quite clearly. But what I have said, I only got the paper back last night. I was reading it till 2 in the morning. and might rest assured that everyone will be having input into this parking consultation. But it is very much about availability of space, etc., green issues, and those actually didn't come out as being particularly of the high priority. It's all about availability and what is there. So in due course, in the next few weeks, you will be seeing what has come back, and it's all about people's opinions. It's not, there were no clear, I think the parameters might have been perhaps thought about, but we've gone past that. So you will be getting the feedback from that, and then that's when we will come back with the advice, which hopefully you will all have the opportunity to give more input at that stage. All right?
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to open another can of worms, but I will comment on that one. What is the problem here? Is it that we don't have enough car parking? Is it that we have too many cars? Or, as just been mentioned, is it that our public bus service has just totally collapsed? Even a village like Boxford has virtually no buses anymore. Some of my rural villages, just 1 or 2 a week. Everybody has to have 1, 2 or 3 cars, and that is the problem. You've got to tackle it probably from that end, because people just have no choice, and even a council often has 3 cars now, and that is the times we are living in, and that is the root of the problem. The other can of worms I was going to open is voids, Chairman, and you know, I'm as guilty as anybody. When I was on overburden scrutiny, we championed getting it down. It was like being top of the Premiership. Or can we get it any quicker? But there is a downside to this, and I've sort of hit into that quite badly. We do have to make sure in cutting this time that the houses are fit to be hired, and also especially when we show people around, they should be in a good condition that somebody would want to live there. And some of our houses become voids because people die, people are evicted or move out in horrible circumstances. I raise this now, and I have sorted it and settled it in my own way, but recently I had a case where a couple were shown round a house where somebody had died, and it looked as if it had been absolutely ransacked, and we have to be careful. And these people come out of a tied house, Chairman, and desperate need of housing, but they were quite shocked. They were used to farming people. They were used to seeing things butchered in the sink and everything else. He was a gamekeeper, but they were quite traumatised by what they saw in this house, and including the deceased's false teeth lying around in various rooms. So I think in our challenges to get the time down, please just be a bit sensitive and be a bit careful that when people are shown, the houses are actually fit to be let at that time, because that doesn't look good either. So I'm not criticising anybody. It has been sorted, but there can be a downside to our challenge to get things done quicker. I just thought, good time to raise that, Chairman, and for God's sake, do something about the lack of buses.
Scrutiny, looking at the transport setup at some point. In fact, there's a team that's set up to look at it. So I would just like to add that the green spaces that Councillor Lindsay talks about, I have been, and like most of you here, have travelled around. I'm afraid the utility services don't do the green spaces any good at all. They're always digging stuff up, and where are they bargaining to do that? On those green spaces. So anyway, that's my 2 penneth. Thank you. Councillor Osborne, is there anything you wish to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Speak up.
Caught me on the hop on that one. Yeah, briefly, I am pleased that we've had a good and healthy debate, very healthy debate, and members' comments are noted specifically on parking and on voids. This approach is the way forward. in developing our revised HRA, with the drivers being those identified by our tenants, our members and the Social Housing White Paper. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our tenants and our members for engaging in this process to get where we are today. And also thank you to our officers in the housing team for their continued commitment and hard work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'd also make reference to the housing team. I think they've been excellent, and Gavin Fisk has done a wonderful few years with the housing. Thank you, Gavin. Last one.
Thank you,
Stand,
Chair.
please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm used to the standing. Right, thanks, Chair. The only thing I'll say, I understand about the new build and the cost and everything else about being green. My one concern is, and I've brought it up before, maybe not the right agenda, but there's a lot of houses, well, 2 or 3 I know, which are local to me, which stand empty, and they've stood empty for 2 years. And there's people live either side of these houses, so these houses could be done up and made habitable. So I believe these houses need to be done, and I don't think there's an excuse that they stand empty and there's people who need them. Thank you.
It's very unusual, and it's not in our favour, because we need to get people off the housing register to leave houses empty. There are situations with a void. If somebody, for example, has gone into care, there's no way we can remove that tenancy until that person has confirmed that they've gone into permanent care. So sometimes that can go on for years, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. But I will ask Gavin if he's got any more to add on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of information, really, on the parking and still looking green. If you like to Google grasscrete, you can find that there's a simple system out there. It's used a lot around blocks of flats so that turntable ladders can park on what looks like grass, but not sink in when they're trying to put out fires, etc. But it's often done with concrete blocks, but it can also be done with recycled plastic blocks. So it's an environmentally friendly system as well.
Right, thanks for Jan's response, but the houses that I personally know about, there's no one gone into a home, they've been unoccupied. These belong to the council. There's tenants live either side of these properties. At some point, someone would have owned one of them, and the council would have bought it, and that'll stand there empty. So it's just not a situation that should be happening. They should be occupied. Thank you.
I'd now like to ask the Corporate Manager Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open and showing in blue. If you could cast your votes, please. Councillor Lindsay, can I take your vote, please? Thank you.
Touch and go.
Councillor Nana, are you still having problems? Would you like? Agreed. Chair, that is 29-4. That is unanimous. Thank you.
That's carried. Thank you very much, members. I'd now like to go to item 11, the draft committee timetable for 22-23. I'd like to invite Councillor Ward to introduce paper BC 2127 and to move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief introduction. This is for the committee timetable for the forthcoming year, 22 to 23. There is an amendment to the appendix to the paper with the timetable in. It's in your tabled papers this evening. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things. Firstly, the amendment that the table paper refers to is the fact that in May 2023, the initial version of the appendix did not have our Babergh Annual Council meeting. That's now been corrected, so that's in the supplement. The other thing I just wanted to draw your attention to is the fact that you'll see that, as we have discussed and promised, there are additional meetings that are in the schedule so that we have monthly council meetings for conducting the additional business that we promised we would do to allow members to have a greater input into various topics. So we've now got monthly council meetings in this schedule. So I'd like to propose the recommendations and second it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Could I have a second, please? Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Simon Barrett. Would you like to speak?
I was just I just really pointed that we have got a meeting on the 23rd of August scheduled, by the looks of it. It would interrupt my time off, which is very dear to me. And I just wonder whether that is, it does say provisional. How provisional is provisional? I'm very concerned about this.
That is one of the additional meetings that we've put into the schedule. They're all registered as provisional at the moment. Obviously, depending on whether there is actually any business to conduct, then those meetings may or may not take place. But we've done it so that every month is covered. I guess with August, most people might well want to go on holiday. You'll be off on your camping trips around the UK, probably. Yeah. So we'll have to see. We'll play it by ear. It's provisional, so we'll wait closer to the date to determine whether that will happen or not.
The only thing that is there is obviously, when you're an organised person like myself and you then go ahead, it is slightly frustrating when you obviously leave a gap in your holiday provision to have a council meeting then cancelled. So if we are going to cancel them, could we cancel them at least 2 months ahead?
But, Councillor Barrett, you have...
Leader, this is only a non-serious.
You do have sufficient notice. You can book your holiday around it, perhaps, if you really wanted to attend.
He has so many.
Not enough.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Councillor Beer.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't realise that there's been an agenda paper sent through that's altered these dates. So could you just remind me which dates have changed from the dates that are printed on page 73 and 74 of the agenda?
Yes, Councillor Beer. It is for May 23rd, 23rd of May 2023. There was a mistype there which said that it had the overview and scrutiny down twice, but now it's been corrected so that the Babergh Annual Council meeting is there.
The rest is the same.
Yeah. If there's no other questions, members, I'd like to ask our Corporate Manager Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing in blue if you can cast your votes. Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, can I take your vote? Thank you.
Beat me Suffolk on that one.
Chair, that is unanimous for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Carried. Thank you. I'd now like to turn to number 12, the BC 2128, political balance and composition of committees. I refer to the amended Appendix A in the table papers, and I would like to invite the monitoring officer to introduce her report.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to present the revised political balances and committee places following 2 changes to the political groupings. Councillor Owen, who was previously an ungrouped councillor, has now joined with members of the Green Group to form the Green and Labour Group. Councillor Mabry has left the Independent Group and rejoined the Conservative Group. The revised political balances and committee places has been included at Appendix A to the report. The changes are that the Independent Group has lost a seat on the Planning Committee and the Conservative Group has gained that seat, and that the previously unallocated seat on the Planning Committee has now been allocated to the Green and Labour Group. Chairman, I'm very happy to answer any questions on the report and would ask for a proposer and seconder for the recommendation. Thank you.
Propose.
Jonathan, Councillor Wall.
Yeah, there's just one. On paragraph 3.2, it still says that Babergh has one ungrouped member of the council. Okay, thanks.
There's no vote on this, is there?
Yes.
Right. So I'd like to ask the Governance Officer, Civic Office, to conduct the electronic vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing in blue. If you can cast your vote. Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, can I take your vote? Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That vote is unanimous for.
Thank you. We're up to 13, aren't we? Yes. Item 13, council appointments. Council is asked to approve the appointments to committee as detailed on the agenda. Monitoring Officer, Emily.
Thank you, Chairman. As there are quite a few changes, I just thought I'd run through them for councillors so that you're all clear on where the changes have been made. And also I've been notified of a few late ones this evening. So I just will run through the list, and if I have got anything wrong, if you could shout at the relevant point so we make sure that we're all very clear on who's been appointed to the various places. So, Councillor Owen is staying on the Planning Committee, but changing from an ungrouped member to the Green and Labour Group member. Councillor Mabry is joining the Planning Committee, and Councillor Parker will be removed from the Planning Committee. Councillor Mabry is replacing Councillor Dawson on Licensing and Regulatory Committee, so in effect is staying on, but is now taking the Conservative seat. And Councillor Parker will be filling the Independent Group vacancy on the Licensing and Regulatory Committee left by Councillor Mabry. Councillor Hinton will be filling the Independent Group vacancy on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And Chairman, finally, I would just like to report to the Council that there is a Green and Labour Group vacancy on the Joint Audit and Standards Committee. And hopefully that was all correct. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Does anybody want to? Councillor Busby.
Yes, Chair. There seems to be a lot of changing, particularly on the other side of the house there. People coming in and out. I just wonder whether they recognise what a party is.
I don't know if they do, David, but Boris does.
Thank you. That's enough. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to go to vote now, so I'll ask our Governance and Civic Officer to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now going to be showing in blue. If you can cast your vote. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett's got his hand up. Oh, sorry.
I'll turn the computer off.
I'll take it. Okay. And Councillor Lindsay? Chair, that is unanimously for.
So that is carried. Can I just say thank you all members for a good evening and a good time scale. Thank you very much. Item 14, motions on notice. Thank you. The date of the next council meeting will be on Monday the 21st of February at 5:30. So I now close the meeting. Thank you.